As I sat there, staring at my son, I couldn't help but think about all the times I had bailed him out of trouble. All the times I had given him a second chance. And now, here he was, confessing to using his trust fund money for his own business ventures. I was torn between anger and disappointment. But as I looked into his eyes, I saw something that gave me hope. It was a glimmer of remorse, a sign that he was willing to make things right. And in that moment, I knew I had to make a choice. Do I turn my back on him, or do I give him another chance? I took a deep breath and began to speak, my voice calm and measured. Jack, I'm disappointed in you. But I'm also willing to listen. Tell me what happened. Tell me why you did what you did. He hesitated for a moment, then began to speak. I don't know, Dad. I just got caught up in the moment. I saw an opportunity to make some money, and I took it. I didn't think about the consequences. I listened to his words, trying to make sense of them. And as I did, I realized that my son was not a bad person. He was just lost, just trying to find his way in the world. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I had to help him, to guide him back onto the right path. But as I looked at him, I also knew that I had to be careful. I had to make sure that he didn't take advantage of me again. I had to set boundaries, to make it clear that I wouldn't tolerate any more of his reckless behavior. And so, I began to speak, my voice firm but gentle. Jack, I'm willing to help you. But you have to promise me one thing. You have to promise me that you'll be responsible, that you'll think about the consequences of your actions. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. I promise, Dad. I promise. And in that moment, I knew that I had made the right decision. I had given my son another chance, but I had also set him on the path to redemption. And as I looked at him, I felt a sense of hope, a sense that things might finally be turning around for us. As the days went by, I kept a close eye on Jack. I made sure he was sticking to his promise, that he was being responsible with his finances. And at first, it seemed like he was. He was working hard, putting in long hours at his job, and he was even taking classes at night to learn more about business. But as the weeks turned into months, I started to notice something was off. Jack was being secretive again, hiding things from me. And when I confronted him, he just brushed it off, telling me I was being paranoid. I tried to push the thoughts aside, to focus on the good things that were happening. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. And then, one night, I stumbled upon a piece of paper that made my heart sink. It was a receipt, for a large sum of money. And it was addressed to Jack. I felt a wave of anger wash over me, and I knew I had to confront him. Jack, what is this? I demanded, holding up the receipt. He looked up at me, his eyes flashing with guilt. It's nothing, Dad, he said, trying to brush it off. But I wasn't having it. Don't lie to me, Jack, I said, my voice firm. I know what this is. This is the money from the trust fund, isn't it? Jack sighed, looking down at the ground. Yes, Dad, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I know I promised I wouldn't touch it, but I just needed it, okay? I felt a wave of disappointment wash over me. I had trusted Jack, and he had let me down. Again. Why did you do it, Jack? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. Why did you take the money? Jack looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. I don't know, Dad, he said, his voice cracking. I felt like I needed it. Like I deserved it. I shook my head, feeling a sense of sadness wash over me. You didn't deserve it, Jack, I said, my voice firm. You didn't earn it. And now, you're going to have to face the consequences. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. I knew I had to stay rational, to think about what to do next. Jack, we need to talk about this, I said, my voice steady. We need to figure out what to do next. Jack nodded, looking down at the ground. I know, Dad, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. I sighed, feeling a sense of uncertainty wash over me. I didn't know what to do, or how to fix things. But I knew I had to try. As we sat there, trying to figure out what to do next, I couldn't help but think about the past. About all the times Jack had let me down, and all the times I had forgiven him. And I realized that I had been enabling him, all along. I had been giving him chance after chance, and he had been taking advantage of me. I knew I had to stop that, now. I had to set boundaries, and make it clear that I wouldn't tolerate any more of his reckless behavior. But as I looked at Jack, I saw something that gave me pause. I saw a glimmer of hope, a sign that he was willing to change. And I knew that I had to give him one more chance. One more chance to prove himself, to show me that he was capable of change. But this time, I was going to do things differently. This time, I was going to set boundaries, and make it clear that I wouldn't tolerate any more of his nonsense. And I was going to make him work for it. I was going to make him prove himself, to show me that he was worthy of my trust. As we sat there, trying to figure out what to do next, I knew that I had a long road ahead of me. A road filled with uncertainty and doubt. But I also knew that I had to take it, one step at a time. And I had to be strong, for Jack's sake. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. And I began to speak, my voice firm but gentle. Jack, here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady. You're going to have to work hard, to prove yourself to me. You're going to have to show me that you're capable of change, that you're willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. Jack nodded, looking up at me with a determined look in his eyes. I'll do it, Dad, he said, his voice firm. I'll do whatever it takes. I looked at him, trying to read his expression. And I saw something that gave me hope. I saw a glimmer of determination, a sign that he was willing to change. And I knew that I had to hold on to that, no matter what. I had to hold on to the hope that Jack was capable of change, that he was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. As we sat there, trying to figure out what to do next, I knew that I had a long road ahead of me. A road filled with uncertainty and doubt. But I also knew that I had to take it, one step at a time. And I had to be strong, for Jack's sake. And I had to hold on to hope, no matter what. As the days went by, Jack worked hard to prove himself to me. He was diligent, showing up to his job on time and putting in extra hours to make up for the money he had taken. He even started attending financial counseling sessions to learn how to manage his money better. I was proud of him, and I could see the determination in his eyes. But despite his efforts, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. He was being too perfect, too eager to please. And I knew that Jack was not a perfect person. He was flawed, just like everyone else. And I couldn't help but wonder what he was hiding. I started to notice small things, tiny inconsistencies in his story. He would say one thing, but then do another. And when I confronted him, he would brush it off, telling me I was being paranoid. But I knew I wasn't being paranoid. I knew that Jack was hiding something, and I was determined to find out what it was. I started to investigate, looking into his past and talking to people who knew him. And what I found out was shocking. Jack had been involved in some shady dealings that could get him into serious trouble. I felt a wave of fear wash over me, and I knew I had to confront him. Jack, we need to talk, I said, my voice firm. I know what you've been up to, and I'm not happy. Jack looked up at me, his eyes flashing with guilt. What are you talking about, Dad? He asked, trying to play dumb. But I wasn't having it. Don't lie to me, Jack, I said, my voice firm. I know all about your little schemes. And I'm telling you, it's not going to end well. Jack sighed, looking down at the ground. I know, Dad, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do. I'm in over my head. I looked at him, trying to read his expression. And I saw something that gave me pause. I saw a glimmer of fear, a sign that he was in trouble. And I knew that I had to help him, no matter what. Jack, we need to get you out of this, I said, my voice firm. We need to find a way to get you out of this mess before it's too late. Jack nodded, looking up at me with a determined look in his eyes. "I'll do whatever it takes, Dad," he said, his voice firm. "I'll do whatever it takes to get out of this." I looked at him, trying to read his expression. And I saw something that gave me hope. I saw a glimmer of determination, a sign that he was willing to do whatever it took to get out of this mess. And I knew that I had to help him, no matter what. As we sat there, trying to figure out what to do next, I knew that we had a long road ahead of us. A road filled with uncertainty and doubt. But I also knew that we had to take it, one step at a time. And I had to be strong, for Jack's sake. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. And I began to speak, my voice firm but gentle. "Jack, we need to come up with a plan," I said, my voice steady. "We need to find a way to get you out of this mess, and we need to do it now." Jack nodded, looking up at me with a determined look in his eyes. "I'll do whatever it takes, Dad," he said, his voice firm. "I'll do whatever it takes to get out of this." I looked at him, trying to read his expression. And I saw something that gave me hope. I saw a glimmer of determination, a sign that he was willing to do whatever it took to get out of this mess. And I knew that I had to hold on to that, no matter what. As we sat there, trying to come up with a plan, I knew that we had a long road ahead of us. A road filled with uncertainty and doubt. But I also knew that we had to take it, one step at a time. And I had to be strong, for Jack's sake. As we sat there, trying to come up with a plan, I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were running out of time. Jack's involvement in the shady dealings had already attracted the attention of some unsavory characters, and I knew it was only a matter of time before they came knocking on our door. I looked at Jack, trying to impress upon him the gravity of the situation. "Jack, we need to move fast," I said, my voice urgent. "We need to get you out of this before it's too late." Jack nodded, his eyes wide with fear. "I know, Dad," he said, his voice trembling. "I'll do whatever it takes." I took a deep breath, trying to think of a plan. We couldn't go to the police, not yet. We needed to gather more evidence, to build a case against the people who were behind the shady dealings. And we needed to do it without putting ourselves in harm's way. I looked around the room, trying to think of a safe place to hide. And then, I remembered a friend who owed me a favor. Someone who could help us, someone who could keep us safe. I picked up the phone, dialing the number quickly. "Hello," a voice answered on the other end. "Hey, Mike," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I need a favor. I need a place to hide, somewhere safe." There was a pause on the other end, and for a moment, I wondered if I had made a mistake. But then, Mike spoke up. "I've got a place," he said, his voice low. "But you need to be careful. The people you're dealing with, they're not to be trusted." I nodded, even though Mike couldn't see me. "I know," I said. "But we need to take the risk. Can you meet us at the old warehouse on 5th and Main?" Mike agreed, and I hung up the phone. I looked at Jack, trying to reassure him. "It's going to be okay," I said, my voice firm. "We'll get through this." Jack nodded, his eyes still wide with fear. But I could see a glimmer of hope there, a glimmer of determination. And I knew that we would get through this, no matter what. We made our way to the old warehouse, our hearts pounding in our chests. I could feel the tension building, the air thick with anticipation. And when we arrived, Mike was waiting for us, his eyes scanning the surrounding area. "Good," he said, when he saw us. "You're here. Let's get you settled in." He led us to a small room in the back of the warehouse, a room that was equipped with everything we needed. Food, water, a place to sleep. It was a safe haven, a place where we could hide out until the danger passed. I looked at Jack, trying to reassure him. "We'll be okay here," I said, my voice firm. "We'll be safe." Jack nodded, his eyes still wide with fear. But I could see a glimmer of hope there, a glimmer of determination. And I knew that we would get through this, no matter what. As we settled in, I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were being watched. I looked around the room, trying to see if I could spot anything out of the ordinary. But there was nothing. Just the sound of the wind outside, the creaks and groans of the old warehouse. I sighed, trying to relax. We were safe here, I told myself. We were safe. But as I lay down on the makeshift bed, I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were running out of time. The people who were behind the shady dealings were not going to give up easily. They would keep coming, keep trying to get to us. And I knew that we couldn't stay hidden forever. Eventually, we would have to face them, eventually we would have to take a stand. I looked over at Jack, who was lying on the floor, his eyes closed. He was scared, I could see that. But he was also determined. Determined to get out of this, determined to make it right. And I knew that I would do whatever it took to help him. Whatever it took to keep him safe. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. I kept thinking about the people who were after us, wondering what they would do next. I looked over at Jack, who was still lying on the floor, his eyes closed. He was trying to sleep, but I could tell he was just as worried as I was. I got up and walked over to the window, looking out into the night. The streets were empty, but I could feel eyes on us. I knew we were being watched, and it made my skin crawl. I turned back to Jack, trying to reassure him. "Hey, kiddo," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "You okay?" Jack opened his eyes, looking up at me. "Yeah, Dad," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what's going to happen." I sat down next to him, putting a hand on his shoulder. "We'll get through this, Jack," I said, trying to sound confident. "We'll figure out a way to take care of this." Jack nodded, but I could tell he was still scared. And I didn't blame him. I was scared too. As the night wore on, I kept watch, waiting for any sign of trouble. And then, just as the sun was starting to rise, I heard a noise. It was a faint scratching sound, coming from outside the room. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Jack looked up at me, his eyes wide with fear. "What is it?" he whispered. I didn't answer. I just got up and walked over to the door, trying to listen more closely. The scratching sound was getting louder, and I could tell it was coming from the other side of the door. I felt a surge of adrenaline, and I knew I had to act fast. I grabbed Jack's arm, pulling him to his feet. "We have to get out of here," I said, my voice low and urgent. "Now." Jack didn't argue. He just followed me as I led him out of the room, down the hallway, and out into the bright morning light. We didn't stop running until we were blocks away from the warehouse, gasping for breath. And even then, I knew we weren't safe. We had to keep moving, had to keep running. Because the people who were after us were not going to give up easily. They would keep coming, keep trying to get to us. And I knew that we couldn't outrun them forever. Eventually, we would have to face them, eventually we would have to take a stand. But for now, we just kept running. We ran through the streets, dodging pedestrians and cars. We ran through alleys and backstreets, trying to lose our pursuers. And finally, after what felt like hours, we saw a glimmer of hope. A small cafe, tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. We ducked inside, hoping to find a safe haven. But as we sat down at a table, trying to catch our breath, I saw something that made my heart sink. A familiar face, sitting in the corner of the cafe. Watching us. Waiting for us. I felt a surge of fear, and I knew we were in trouble. Big trouble. I tried to stay calm, but my mind was racing. Who was this person, and what did they want with us? I glanced over at Jack, who was oblivious to the danger that was lurking just a few feet away. I knew I had to act fast, to protect him from whatever was coming our way. I leaned in close, trying to whisper without being overheard. "Jack, we need to get out of here," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Now." Jack looked up at me, confusion etched on his face. "What's wrong, Dad?" he asked, his voice louder than I would have liked. I glanced over at the stranger, who was now watching us with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Just trust me, kiddo," I said, my voice low and urgent. "We need to go." Jack nodded, and we quickly got up from the table, trying to blend in with the other patrons of the cafe. But it was too late. The stranger had already spotted us, and was now making his way over to our table. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as he approached us, his eyes fixed on us with an unnerving intensity. "Well, well, well," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Look what we have here. The infamous Jack and his dear old dad." I tried to stay calm, but my mind was racing. Who was this guy, and what did he want with us? I looked over at Jack, who was now standing frozen beside me, his eyes wide with fear. "What do you want?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. The stranger smiled, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Oh, I think you know exactly what I want," he said, his voice dripping with menace. "You see, Jack here has been playing with fire, and now he's going to get burned." I felt a surge of anger, and I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let this guy hurt Jack, no matter what. I stepped forward, trying to position myself between the stranger and my son. "You're not going to hurt him," I said, my voice firm. "Not while I'm still breathing." The stranger laughed, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Oh, I'm shaking in my boots," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But I think you'll find that you're not as powerful as you think you are." I felt a surge of fear, and I knew I was in trouble. This guy was not just any ordinary thug. He was something more, something that I couldn't quite put my finger on. But I knew one thing for sure. I was going to do whatever it took to protect Jack, no matter what the cost. I looked over at my son, who was now watching me with a mixture of fear and admiration. I knew I had to be strong for him, to show him that I would always be there to protect him. And so, I stood my ground, ready to face whatever was coming our way. The stranger sneered at me, his eyes glinting with contempt. "You're a foolish old man," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think you can protect him, but you can't. You're no match for me." I felt a surge of anger, and I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let this guy get the better of me, not while Jack was counting on me. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. And then, I did something that I never thought I would do. I pulled out my phone, and I dialed a number that I had been given just a few days before. A number that I had been told would connect me to someone who could help us, someone who could keep us safe. The stranger's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of fear. But it was quickly replaced by a look of anger, a look that made my skin crawl. "You fool," he spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you can outsmart me? I'll show you what happens when you cross me." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving us shaken and scared. But I knew that we weren't safe yet. We still had to get out of there, to find a place where we could hide. And so, I grabbed Jack's arm, and we quickly left the cafe, trying to put as much distance between us and the stranger as possible. But as we walked, I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were being watched, that the stranger was still out there, waiting for us. As we walked, I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were being watched. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see the stranger's face staring back at me. But every time, I saw nothing. We finally made it to the safe house, a small apartment on the outskirts of town. We had been given the address by the person on the phone, the person who had promised to help us. As we entered the apartment, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. We were finally safe. But as we settled in, I couldn't help but think about the stranger. Who was he? And what did he want with us? I tried to push the thoughts out of my mind, focusing on the present moment. But they kept coming back, haunting me. Days turned into weeks, and we heard nothing from the stranger. We had thought that he would have given up by now, but I knew better. One day, as we were watching TV, I saw a news report about a man who had been arrested for his involvement in a string of burglaries. And then I saw his face. It was the stranger. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, followed by a sense of satisfaction. Karma had finally caught up with him. But as I looked over at Jack, I saw that he was still scared. He was still worried about what could happen to us. I got up and walked over to him, putting my arm around him. "It's okay, kiddo," I said. "We're safe now. He can't hurt us anymore." Jack looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said. "I'm sorry for putting us in danger." I pulled him close, holding him tightly. "It's not your fault, Jack," I said. "You didn't know what was going to happen. And even if you did, you couldn't have stopped it." As we hugged, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We had made it through the storm, and we were finally safe. And as we stood there, holding each other, I knew that we would always be okay. We would always have each other, no matter what. The stranger's arrest was just the beginning of the end of our troubles. The police investigation that followed revealed a web of deceit and corruption that went all the way to the top. The stranger, whose name was revealed to be Marcus, had been involved in a string of burglaries and thefts, using his charisma and good looks to charm his victims. But he had also been involved in something much bigger, a massive embezzlement scheme that had drained millions of dollars from the city's coffers. As the investigation continued, more and more people were arrested and charged, including some of the city's most powerful officials. And through it all, Jack and I were hailed as heroes, our bravery and quick thinking credited with bringing the whole thing down. We were showered with praise and accolades, and our lives were forever changed. But for me, the best part of it all was seeing Jack finally able to live a normal life, free from the fear and anxiety that had haunted him for so long. He was finally able to go to school, to make friends, to live a life without looking over his shoulder. And I was finally able to rest easy, knowing that my son was safe, and that justice had been served. As I looked at Jack, I felt a sense of pride and satisfaction. We had made it through the storm, and we had come out stronger on the other side. And I knew that no matter what life threw our way, we would always be okay, as long as we had each other.